In climbing, we can nearly always try again. And we do, spending season after season on our hardest projects, getting on, falling off, and getting back on again. And it's this kind of constant dance with failure that makes climbing special. But it's also this opportunity to constantly dance that creates our strange relationship with failure. We don't really fail. We try again. To truly fail in climbing, we have to quit. Now, you felt a way when you heard that word. It has a negative connotation no matter who you are or how healthy your relationship is with failure. We just don't like to quit. We don't want to be thought of as quitters. In this video, I'm going to tell you why climbers should be quitting more. And not only that, but I'll explain how you can decide when quitting is the right answer and when you should maybe just hold steady. Let's get into it. In 2016, Stephen Levitt, economist at the University of Chicago and host of the Freakonomics Radio podcast, did a large-scale study. He asked people who were facing a tough decision to flip a digital coin with one side saying stick and one side saying change, and to then follow that advice. And over 20,000 people participated, many of them contemplating major decisions. 2,200 considering quitting a job, 1,700 trying to decide whether or not to end a relationship, thousands more seeking a randomized coin flips advice on having a child, going back to school, starting a business, and more. Now, as you might guess, at the 2-month mark, many of the people told to change hadn't followed through. But by the 6-month mark, most of those people had decided that they actually did need the change. The most surprising result of the study was that the people who followed through with the advice to change were happier, felt they'd made the correct decision, and said they'd do it again, as opposed to the people told to stick with their status quo. Why? Because if they were willing to flip a digital coin and take random advice in the first place, they were ready for that change. They just weren't ready to admit it. Now, like I said earlier, in climbing, we can always try again. Sure, we fall off and we don't send, but there's no finality to that. It's not a true failure because we get to try again. To fail, we have to quit, and we hate that. We don't even like to consider what quitting might cost us. But I think there's a better question. What is not quitting costing you? What is sticking to it, trying that same project again and again, costing you? See, whenever you spend your time on something, it's costing you some other opportunity. Time you could be with family or working on some other route, time you could be in the gym getting stronger or searching for new boulders or a million other things. This is what economists call opportunity cost. What if that other opportunity, the one that you're missing, is worth more to you than the thing that you're doing? What if you're ready to flip a digital coin? It often doesn't matter. As climbers, we just don't like to quit. But we should. I know because I had to. See, I had this goal to send 100 513s and harder by my 50th birthday. And last summer, I realized that my time was winding down. I still had several 513s to do, and at the pace I was keeping, there was just no way I was going to make it. And it's because I hadn't been quitting soon enough. I was drawing things out, not wanting to walk away, because I should be able to, and probably can, climb just about any 13A or 13B. Given enough time, that is. But this was a race. I didn't have the luxury of enough time. And out here in the land of very bouldery sport routes with very specific pocket cruxes, it's possible that an easy 13A for someone who's 5'11" will be a low percentage 13B for me. I could still eke it out eventually. But is it worth the opportunity cost? Well, sometimes, yes. Sometimes it's going to be a meaningful send, and you should keep working on it. But we have to be careful not to make that choice every time. So, as I was closing in on the goal, but the deadline was closing in faster on me, I set what professional poker player Annie Duke calls kill criteria. Annie Duke is also the author of the book Quit: The Power of Knowing When to Walk Away. And even though she last cashed in at a poker tournament in 2010, she's still in the top 5 all-time female money winners with over $4 million in winnings. You don't get that good at poker by being bad at decision making. She had noticed that people would get trapped in the sunk cost fallacy, believing that because they'd already spent something, time, energy, money, they had to keep going. They would only look to see what past them had invested, and wouldn't ask which choice was better for current or future them. They had money in the pot, they had raised the stakes, and even though they suspected they had a losing hand, they just kept playing. Her answer to stay out of this conundrum herself? Kill criteria. See, she knew that in the heat of the moment, her emotions would influence her decisions, and to avoid that, she created a list of criteria that, when met, meant she would fold her hand right then and there. So I did the same with my projects. And it looks something like this. If at any time I felt like injury was a distinct possibility on a route, I folded. If I hadn't done all of the moves and repeated them by the first attempt of session 3, I folded. If I regressed on a route in 2 consecutive sessions, and I couldn't pinpoint something like not getting any sleep or unusually high stress, which rarely crept up 2 sessions in a row, I folded. If there was a low percentage move, but I could do the remainder of the route, I would give 3 or 4 honest efforts, and if no send, I folded. If I just couldn't get conditions and partners to line up after 2 or 3 attempts to do so, I folded. Now, over the past few years, I've seen a growing trend among climbers to create lists of the links needed to send a project, something I've often championed. These lists, though, have the potential to accelerate our progression even more if we take the simple step of transforming them into kill criteria. And we can do this by adding something Annie Duke calls states and dates. Essentially saying, I need to be in this state by this date, or I quit. Now notice in my kill criteria, I give these dates as the number of sessions. I need to be at this point in the project by this session, or I quit. Without this defining factor, these projects could still drag on for far too long. Now, this entire video is based on a chapter from my recent book, Adapt: Lessons Learned Climbing 100 513s. And while illustrating the book, I made a flowchart to illustrate this chapter, and it might help you understand how to use these concepts. Now, at the start is you considering the flip of the digital coin. So you're considering quitting this project. If that's not you, then by all means, keep trying. But if yes, then you need to ask yourself if there are kill criteria in place. And if not, set them. And set them when you can think clearly and you aren't in the thick of it. And be honest. And if yes, you've already done that, then does it have states and dates? If no, set them. Again, be honest about when is appropriate for you to move on. And if states and dates are already in place, then it's time to face up to the truth. Have you met your kill criteria? No? Then keep trying. And if continuing to try is frustrating, this is a great way to realize that you're still in the game and you can get some renewed motivation. But if the answer is yes, you've met your kill criteria, then it's time to quit. Move on. Like the people in that study with the digital coin, it's likely that in a few months you'll be glad you made the choice that you did. Now, as it got down to the final few days before my 50th birthday and I was still 2 routes short, I tightened my kill criteria even more. On my first go up a route, I needed to see a strong possibility of doing it that session or the next, or I just folded right there. Often, I wouldn't even go to the top of a route. If there was something low percentage, low down, I would just move on. And it's because I had this kill criteria in place that I was able to zero in on the things I could get done. And I reached my goal on the morning of my 50th, making that year my most productive in terms of number of 513s done. And now, in true climber fashion, I can go back to some of those things that I quit on, but with different kill criteria in place, of course. Now, if you're interested in checking out the book, Adapt, the link is right there in the description, and you can hear more about the most important skill for climbing 513, which is one of the central ideas of the entire book, by watching this video next.